Okay, everyone, we're back. It's Thursday, and we've got John back on for a bit of a Q&A that we're planning today, John, since it's the international break. People have been sending their questions in, so we will get to them, most of them at least. First of all, John, let's have a chat about Sunday. Not a bad day, eh?
Not bad at all, Hamish. Specifically, that first half for me, I thought was outstanding. Exactly what we wanted to see from Celtic in that derby. You know, early stages, Rangers did come at us, but I thought, my feeling on that opening 10 minutes wasn't that Rangers were dominating us. It was more that I felt Celtic were trying to figure out the way Rangers were playing and the way to get at Rangers. And then once McGregor broke through a couple of times, broke through the press, broke through midfield, it was really on, and Celtic had figured out how to play around them, and they did so for the next half an hour until half time. And I thought it was outstanding. Some of the football, I thought the aggression and the intensity of our play was right up there with what we want in this derby specifically. And I think Brendan Rodgers has put together a really strong team of people who are willing to run through brick walls for him and each other. And, that bodes well over the course of the entire season. So we're looking forward to seeing how the team improves from here. Rodgers, you know what Rodgers is always saying. He's always saying there's constant improvement. He's saying it's early in the season. I think he sees this team, taking up another level or two from where they're at the moment, and hopefully we do get to see that.
The last kind of 6 months, let's just say, since maybe those struggles we had in February, they've been pretty spectacular, haven't they? When you look at the matches we played in that time, it's as much as I've enjoyed watching a Celtic team in years. Like I don't know if I guess everyone does realise that because we're so excited at the moment, but I think this is as good a Celtic team as we've had in a number of years.
Yeah, and someone said to me, it's reminiscent to the way Ange's second season started. When we were hammering everyone, we beat Rangers comfortably in that game. Let's see how it translates to Europe. Obviously, that's still the big question mark for this team and for the manager in many respects. So let's see how we transition to that before I'm jumping through too many hoops. But I will say I was very pleased with the performance, specifically in that first half against Rangers. And I just thought we were pretty ruthless when we got going, ruthless in front of the goal. And I'm excited to see where we go from here, definitely.
And you got your players in that you wanted at the end of the transfer window as well, so the squad's looking trim, neat and ready to go.
I mean, yeah, we got the 4 signings done that we wanted to. I think me and you were being a little bit greedy when we were thinking, should we bring in another winger as well? I'm not sure that was ever really on the cards. I think we pursued 4 players in that last week of the window, and we signed 4 players in that last week of the window. And I think, overall, you're looking at the transfer window in and out, some pretty good business done. We lost one major player in Matt O'Reilly, but we made sure that we got market value for him, or what we perceive as market value for him. And we got rid of loads of people on the fringes of the squad, and we brought in players that we know Brendan Rodgers wants and will utilise throughout the course of the season. There's not going to be a case where half these guys are going to be sitting on the bench for half the season. We're wondering where they are, like Narotsky and Lagerbielke last year. I think they'll all be pretty involved pretty heavily quite quickly, and that's really pleasing.
Yeah, I was looking at the squad the other day, and yeah, we've got rid of a lot of players who weren't going to feature, clearly weren't fancied by Brendan Rodgers. There's still a few in there that I'm not sure about. Yang, Palma, who we'll chat about in this video, Narotsky. But generally, you look at those players on that graphic, and you feel like all of them could probably contribute in some way over the course of the season. I don't think that was the case at all last season, and I think you're going to see Brendan Rodgers really using that squad over the next number of months while we're playing in multiple competitions. I think you're going to see, Taylor playing one game, Vai possibly coming in for the weekend match, or vice versa. You're going to see a lot of Anthony Ralston. You're going to see a lot of Paulo Bernardo, obviously. James Forrest, Adam Ida. We've got options there, and I think he's really going to use them over the next period.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think that's what he wants. He wants a focused squad of people he knows he can trust, and I think he's got that. He's just about got that. As you say, there's maybe one or two there that you're thinking you'd probably only use them in an emergency. And there may be injury emergencies over the course of the year. You never know. And the schedule does get pretty brutal. And we've got to remember there's no. I think I said it last time, but there's no winter break this year, so the squad are going to have to keep going for a long time here without really a long break. So it's crucial that Rodgers has a squad of players he can trust and he knows that can come in and perform to a high level. And just on that, I mean, I even think bringing in Valle and Annie Engels, Luke McCowan. I mean, I don't know if it's a direct contributing factor, but I thought Taylor and Bernardo had a fantastic game against Rangers. So maybe just
Scales as well.
Yeah, Scales as well. So maybe just the introduction of a bit of competition into those areas, I really think might elevate other people in the team as well, which I think is needed.
Yes, everything's good at the moment. It genuinely is. Like I'm so excited. I'm glad we're done with that nonsense transfer window because I was totally fed up saying the same things, having people say the same things. We've moved on for that. We know our path is kind of clear now for the season. It's mapped out. We've got the Champions League. We've now beaten Rangers in the first derby. Bring it on. Right, bring on your questions as well. We're starting with Aidan. Are there any current players you see doing 7 to 10 years in the Celtic first team like McGregor or Brown? Or do you think after McGregor we'll just have a different captain every few years? I guess there's two questions in there so we can tackle them both. The first one on the 7 to 10 years, I was looking at the squad. I mean, Greg Taylor's already been here for 5. I reckon he'll sign a new deal. I've not heard your thoughts on that, but I think he will. So you'll probably see him there for at least 7. I was then looking around the rest of the squad. The two really interesting ones, I'll get your thoughts on whether these guys are going to stick around or whether they're going to move down south. Alistair Johnston and Cameron Carter-Vickers. Now, my gut tells me Johnson probably won't. I just wonder if Carter-Vickers might be one of those players that is so good, but for whatever reason, like maybe McGregor and Brown, doesn't get his move away. And maybe he's quite happy to stay at Celtic for a number of years.
Well, by all accounts, I believe Carter-Vickers is genuinely very happy at Celtic at the moment. I think there was a bit of talk about teams being interested in him over the summer, but I don't think he's actively pursuing that. He is one of those ones where you think, teams in England have already known about Carter-Vickers for a long time. He obviously came through Spurs, but he was on loan a couple of times down in England, and you're thinking, is a team in England going to bite at a big price? Or, would it be a team in Europe? Does Carter-Vickers fancy, another league in Europe, that a different culture, different language, etc. You might not fancy that on a personal basis, so you never know. And you look at it, like you're saying, a few of these players have been at Celtic 3, coming on 4 years already. I mean, even looking at a player like Maeda, is a team going to come in and big for Maeda? He's already been here for what, 2.5, 3 years. He could easily do another couple of years, another two or 3 years. I think the spirit of the question, in the sense of, is there anyone in the squad that's going to become the next McGregor and emerge as the leader in the dressing room and kind of like be here for a next decade? Obviously, I don't think we see that at the moment, do we? I don't think you see that next great hope that's going to take over naturally as a successor to someone. It always felt like McGregor was a natural successor to Scott Brown. I don't think we quite have that successor at the moment, but that's not to say that a lot of these players aren't going to be hanging around. And it's not to say that Rodgers doesn't want that. I think he does. I think he wants more young players coming through. I think he wants players to learn off each other and kind of develop in that way. And also, it depends on how long. You never want to use long-term and Rodgers in the same sentence, just with the nature of everything, how everything panned out in his first spell. But it does feel like Rodgers is putting something together for the long-term at the moment. So you might see a player that can really hang his hat on and think, this guy is the future for Celtic.
So you don't reckon we're looking, when we look at that squad, you don't reckon our next captain is there, do you? Or do you think he might be somewhere?
No, I think he might be somewhere. But, I mean, so what's the leadership group at the moment? It's McGregor, Greg Taylor, Cameron Carter-Vickers, Alistair Johnston. I think, obviously, if Taylor, Carter-Vickers and Johnston stay, past McGregor's retirement point, then obviously they would be a natural successor to McGregor. But I just don't know if that's going to happen. When's McGregor going to retire? Now he's given up international football. He may have really elongated his career, be around for the next 5 years, you know?
Yeah, I was just thinking, I mean, how many years did McGregor play under Brown as captain? It was probably like 5 or 6 seasons. So if you were looking for the same thing to happen, which I think we feel won't, you'd probably be looking for someone to be in by now, because McGregor's probably only got maybe 4 seasons left, something like that, maybe slightly more. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, Cameron Carter-Vickers is the one I'm looking at if I link it to the first part of the question. I'm just thinking Greg Taylor as captain would be an interesting one, how that would go down. But he's certainly, you know, a leader. Yeah, it's going to be interesting moving forward. But we don't have to worry about it for a good while, everyone, because Callum McGregor's there and still flourishing, as we saw on Sunday. Right, John O'Neill, in your opinion, what does success in the CL look like for Celtic this year? Next year is different, when I guess success will be qualifying for the main draw. I think this is quite simple. Brendan Rodgers has said that he wants to make it through to the knockout rounds. He wants a top 24 finish in this big league that we're going to be going into. I do have another wee target I can come on to, but what's your thoughts on that question?
Yeah, top 24. That's what success is in Europe for Celtic this year, is qualifying for the knockout stages. I mean, theoretically, you know, grand success is qualifying for the last 16, but that would require Celtic winning a knockout tie in Europe, which, as we know, has been very difficult to come by in forever. So top 24 for me is a good building block and a good step forward for the Celtic team.
Has the draw changed that at all? Because we did feel that was the goal before the draw. While I was looking at the fixtures, and the fixtures to me looked a bit tougher than when the draw was made in a funny way. Like we do still have a number of really top teams we're playing from the top leagues, and the other 4 teams that aren't from top leagues are all champions of their countries as well. So it's going to present different challenges. So it's very difficult, but I think we all agree the draw could have been a lot worse. So has the draw been made and given us, say, a favourable-ish draw? Has that changed has it raised the bar of success at all?
I don't think so. It's just kind of confirmed to me that we can reach that. I mean, I think before the draw was made, I was thinking, right, we can probably get into this top 24 if we have a pretty decent draw and we play really well. So I think we've had the pretty decent draw, and now we need to play really well, and I think that can get us into the top 24. I think hoping for anything beyond that's probably asking a bit much, especially when we've yet to see, you know, some of the signings really play at the moment. We don't know how much they're going to, you know, increase the level of Celtic. We don't know how Rudy Engels is for you know, coming in and playing at a really high level. Same for Valle. There's too many unknowns at the moment for me to say, you know, we're definitely going to make top 24 to begin with. I think that's a really good marker, and we'll find out how well equipped Celtic are for that. I think top 24 is realistic. I don't think it's too far. I don't think it's too far to say that. I think Rodgers would be the first to say. I don't think it's unrealistic. So let's aim for that and see what the team can do.
Conversely, is it real disappointment, do you think, if we don't make top 24 given the draw? Is there almost a bit of pressure on the team to deliver that, as much as it's maybe something we haven't done in a number of years, make it through to the knockouts?
I don't think there's pressure so much. It depends. Like, if we lose really tight games, really tight competitive games, and we just fall short of that, then obviously, you know, you can say, you know, there's obvious disappointment, but it's not grand failure. I think if we just totally bomb out and do dreadfully, then obviously I think there'll be questions asked, because I think everyone recognises, I think Celtic can be competitive with the set of fixtures that we've got in most of the games. Maybe 6 out of the 8 of them, or maybe 5 out of the 8 of them we can be really competitive in. And you know, that's starting to look like enough points to get through.
Yeah. Away from the points itself, John, I would look at our home matches as being, you know, a real opportunity. Let's try and go unbeaten through these 4 home matches. I don't think that's a particularly unrealistic target to set. Leipzig, fair enough, you know, they beat us a couple of years ago. They're a top European side. I certainly think the other 3 teams shouldn't be beating us at Celtic Park. You know, they're obviously they're good teams, but for me that's been probably the big disappointment in recent years in Europe, has been turning up to Celtic Park, probably with just that kind of hope rather than any sort of expectation, and invariably losing matches even when we've played well, taking a few batterings, of course, in previous times. So for me, I'd look at those 4 home matches. Can we really gather a bit of momentum back at Celtic Park? We're 1 win in a row at Celtic Park in the Champions League. Can we build from that Feyenoord win last season? Can we go unbeaten? Can we maybe win, I don't know, 3 of the 4 matches possibly? Really take a number of points and just get that kind of feeling back at Celtic Park, that people can go and think, we can win games here. That's what I'm looking for as well. Good home record, 10 points.
10 points. I don't think it's too unrealistic to think that. Yeah.
Right, okay. Cam Fletcher, do you worry not having a backup defensive-minded midfielder? So we don't really, do we? Although, we can maybe come on to that. We have lost Iwata, which are interesting. We've lost Kwon, Lawal as well. I'm guessing that Brendan Rodgers wouldn't have allowed Iwata to leave if he didn't have some sort of a plan. Would Engels be the guy who could play a little bit deeper? Is it a case that Callum McGregor not having Scotland duty may mean that he can feature even more for us?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. And I think it's going to be interesting actually to see the shape of our midfield in Europe. I don't know if Rodgers has maybe got an eye on changing it slightly to maybe have two deeper players and someone further forward, or how he's going to approach that specifically away from home. I'm talking about, I don't know if he sees, McGregor maybe needing a little help there, transitioning from defence to attack to defence, etc. I don't know if he sees someone maybe adjusting the role a little bit, but Engels can play in a deeper position. He's not an outright, I don't think he's an outright creative, attacking midfielder. I think he's got a bit of all round his game. I think he's a bit of a boxer, so I see him being able to fulfil that role. Obviously, injuries would be a concern. Obviously, if one of Bernardo can play a little bit deeper as well. So you're thinking we've got 4 really good midfielders, I would suggest, hopefully, and McGregor, Hatate, Engels, and Bernardo. Obviously, if 2 of them get injured at the same time, then it starts to become a problem. But I think we've maybe just got enough there. If you're bringing in another really top player who can perform at a high level, I think you're asking that player to maybe sit on the bench a lot, and you might not be able to attract that player. I think the chat around Engels specifically is that he's come to Celtic because O'Reilly's moved. I don't think we wouldn't be signing this player when O'Reilly was here, because I think that player would want to play football. A player who's leaving the Bundesliga, who's playing week to week in the Bundesliga, isn't going to come to Celtic and become a squad player. Do you know what I mean? So we needed space in the squad to sign a player of that calibre, and hopefully he manages to live up to what Brendan Rodgers, obviously sees in him.
Yeah, you can see why Brendan Rodgers wanted 2 midfielders in. It's weird because at the time, I think I even said to you, do you think we need 2? But looking at it now, if we hadn't have signed 2, you'd be incredibly short in that midfield area. If we hadn't have got Luke McCowan in, as I say, you'd be a couple of injuries away from throwing in Odin Thiago home in a Champions League game.
And that's the case though. McCowan's coming in because we've let Iwata leave because McCowan was coming in. I think if we didn't manage to sign McCowan on deadline day, I don't think we would have let Iwata leave. So it's like, I think Rodgers has the numbers and what he wants in that midfielder. I don't think Rodgers thinks we're short. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Right. 67, Daniel M. Back to the Champions League. Given the order of our Champions League fixtures, is the Slovan Bratislava game at home bordering on must-win territory, John?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I think if you win that first game, what is our away games are coming after that, and there's 2 away games in a row.
Dortmund, Atalanta.
Yeah, so you're thinking even if we get beaten those games, and we've got Leipzig at home as well in the next, so we've got 2 games away from home and Leipzig at home. If you win that first game against Slovan Bratislava, I'm not saying I would expect us to, or want us to, but you could theoretically lose the next 3 games and still be in the hunt for the top 24 in those last 4 games. And I think that's really, really important. I think if you're If you draw or you lose to Slovan Bratislava, I just think you're immediately playing catch-up and you're looking for a big result against a team that you might not be fancied to get that big result against. I think if you beat Slovan Bratislava, you can, weather a little bit of a storm in those other matches and go into those last 4 matches, really thinking that you can still make a top 24. Because if we're thinking 9 or 10 points does it, you can still, if you've got 3 points in the bank, you can pick up the clutch of points you need in the latter half of the schedule. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, it depends what you mean by must-win game, Daniel. I would argue first match of 8 can't be must-win, because if we don't win it, we're nobody's going to be giving up hope.
No,
but having said that, I do feel just for the tone that it sets with everyone, given how kind of I don't know how fragile we all are and the team are with regards to the Champions League. We're all just a little bit worried, even about games like Slovan Bratislava. We have to go out and win that one.
I don't think that's a walkover either. It's not a walkover, is it?
Yeah,
it's going to be
it's funny because I don't often bring up odds because I don't tend to look at odds or care about that kind of thing. But I took a wee look yesterday just to see how big favourites Celtic were, and there's only 2 other teams out of all of the matches in the first round of Champions League fixtures who are bigger favourites than we are in that opening game, which I found staggering given our recent record in the tournament. So based off that, we should be huge favourites to win the game.
Based off that, just everyone keep their money in their pockets here, because
yes.
It's going to be a very difficult 90 minutes, that I think, especially coming into the tournament. We're not up to speed in the tournament at that level. I think they could be a decent side. We've seen so many times a team comes to Celtic Park and we just can't stick a chance away, and they go up the other end of the park and score. And I think there's a possibility of that. But I do think Celtic are favourites for that match. But I just think it might be a little bit harder than everyone's. I don't think it's 3 points in the bag. It's just what I'm saying.
And the atmosphere is going to be really interesting that night, because you're going to have all the usual Champions League trimmings with the anthem, which have changed slightly. I don't know if you saw that. They've slightly changed the anthem. You're going to have all of that stuff and the full house and the atmosphere. But then once the game starts, there's going to be an expectancy from Celtic Park. And I know there always is, to an extent. Even if we played Real Madrid, there's an expectancy. But this is different. Like, this is if we don't get off to that great start, will the fans stick with the team? For me, the fans have to totally stick with the team, because Slovan Bratislava, the champions of Slovakia, they're going to provide more of a test than Rangers did, I think, personally. So we have no right to be assuming we'll win any game at this level. It's a big one, that one.
And they did, just to be fair, to counter my other point, they did get horsed 5-0 at home at the weekend. Yeah. So there is that aspect to it. But I do think if Celtic turn up with intensity and aggression that we've seen in these early stages of the season, I think we should be too much for them. I mean, it should be. But that's the exciting thing about the Champions League. You find out where your team are, I think. We're going to find out where Celtic are at the moment. Are they good enough to comfortably beat the champions of Slovakia? I'm excited to find out that. I don't know the answer to that question, and I'm excited to find out what the answer is.
Okay, right, let's have a disagreement, John. D-Mac, do you think Palma will ever get that early Celtic career form back, or is he just going to fade away? Good question.
I'm groaning because I like him. I really like him.
What do you like about him?
I just like the way he is on the ball. I like that he can be so effective, I think, on the ball, but whether I think it's going to happen for him with that initial rush of excitement, I just don't know if he's going to get enough football to kind of build that momentum again, because I just don't know, particularly if Rodgers fancies him, to be quite frank with you. I think what we've got in Kuhn and Maeda is just a lot of pace, and it's so direct. And, Kuhn especially just runs at defenders. Maeda's just an absolute football terrorist. I'd hate to play against someone like that who just never gives you a minute. I mean, you look at, I put it on Twitter, but you've probably talked about it, but the way Maeda comes, he's in a left wing position, and he's running into the box, and there's a pass that tries to go through to Johnston. This is for McGregor's third goal. The pass gets blocked, and Maeda's the player who reacts. He doesn't even stop running. He just slants his run. He just kind of hooks himself and goes towards the ball, runs towards the ball. Every other player on the pitch, including the Celtic players, are spectators to what Maeda does next. And I just don't think he's not got that kind of industry. I think he's a lot slower in the build-up play. And I think that can be effective. I think you did see that in the first half last season. And I think the second half was a lot to do. I think he picked up a bit of an injury and didn't quite get back to full fitness or where he needed to be. So I think I do think he's got talent, but I just don't know if he's going to build that same momentum that he had in those first 2 or 3 months, because I thought he did look really good in that spell, to be frank with you. And I thought Rodgers got what he needed out of him. But I'd never thought he was like, this guy's a Brendan Rodgers player. I've never thought that about him, even when he was, having an impact. So maybe I agree with you more than you think here, Hamish, because I don't think you fancy him coming back to where he was.
He's just such a strange one, because I can't actually put my finger on why he was so good when he first came in. Maybe he's more suited to European football, I don't know, because in the Champions League he gave us some really big moments, and I generally remember him having some pretty good games. I think he maybe made his debut against Feyenoord or his first start, and he wasn't great away from home, but certainly in the games at Celtic Park he was lively. He scored a couple of goals. He had another one chalked off. Great finish against Lazio. Playing a lot of the time on the right-hand side as well at that stage. Gave us some big goals and moments in the domestic games around that time as well. I remember a pass at Tynecastle, a goal up in Dingwall. And then for whatever reason, maybe as the team struggled a little bit, he kind of fell by the wayside a little bit, had some injuries. And it just feels like he's not had a run of games since then. Because Maeda's there, and now because Kuhn's there, and James Forrest has had a bit of a renaissance as well at the end of the season. So as much as he's our second choice left winger, I feel like would maybe be more likely to see someone like James Forrest pop up in the left if Maeda ever was to go off. But I struggle to see how he kind of revives this, to be honest. I guess I would have said the same about Nicholas Kuhn. In the summer, I didn't think Nicholas Kuhn would be the player he is, but Kuhn has pace. Palma doesn't really, and he's always looking to cut inside as well. So I struggle with him a little bit, I'll be honest.
It's more just the style thing. I think Palma's a player who likes having the ball and then things developing in front of him. I think Rodgers really likes players who are ahead of the ball and make a lot of movement off the ball and make space and opportunities that way. And I think you see that in some of the goals we're scoring at the moment. It's players dropping into space, and I just don't know if I think he's good on the ball. I think he's good with the ball at his feet. I think he likes the responsibility of having creativity, having to be the creative person in the team. But I just don't know if he's a Brendan Rodgers player, and I guess it's another thing we're going to find out over the next while. But if I had to make a prediction, I would say I don't think he's going to get back to that. But I hope that he does, obviously.
Yeah, good question though. James Milani, do we have adequate cover on the right-hand side, particularly in attack? So what have we got? We've got Kuhn, Forrest and Yang. On the right wing. He's also asking, where is Liam Shaw? Liam Shaw, I believe, is still in Celtic's books, but he's been nowhere to be seen in pre-season. A bit like James McCarthy, I reckon these guys have kind of effectively moved on.
I think he's moved on. I think Liam Shaw's moved on. He's certainly not been at training anywhere, as far as I can tell. I think he might have even been quietly deleted from the squad page on CelticFC.com. Which would suggest that
that's happened with James McCarthy as well, hasn't it? Like people say, McCarthy's still there. He's not. McCarthy wasn't even in the team photo this time last year, so he's clearly been moved on as well, quietly.
Yeah. I think. I mean, you saw it. I don't think Celtic even announced Kobayashi moving to Portugal. So there is these quiet exits that aren't really noticed, but I believe Liam Shaw's not with Celtic, no. And in terms of the right wing, yeah, it's just like we've been saying. I think they're kind of interchangeable. I think Rodgers would put Maeda on the right hand side if he needed to, or I just think that I would personally, I think, I know we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, but I would have preferred, another really strong winger attacker coming in to provide more of a spark, and then you've got Maeda, Kun, and another who's like really good, really lively, and there's like viable future there. I think as it is, you've got Kun and Maeda, and then you've got a bunch of people who could maybe do a job, but James Forrest can come in and maybe do a job if he's really on form. Yang, I'm less sure about. Palma, obviously, everyone's got a little bit of a question mark about. So it'd be good to have someone new and exciting there. But again, I think Rodgers just saw there was other priorities in the squad that needed the way the transfer window panned out, and the amount of business we're having to do late on there. I just think he's seen that there was other priorities in the squad, and that's why we never went for it. It was actually one of the reasons I was excited in. I can't remember his name, but the guy from LAFC.
Bogarts.
Bogarts. I was part of the reason why I was excited about him coming in is because he could play in those areas. He could play in the right wing. He could play as an attacker. So that just didn't quite come off apparently. So we'll go with what we'll have.
Yeah, I think generally I'm happy with the right hand side. Generally, I'm kind of happy with the squad. I do think maybe midfield, as we covered earlier, or maybe a couple of injuries at the same time away from struggling a little bit in that area. But I think generally the squad looks okay, and we've moved on a lot of players who weren't going to feature as well. Right, Kevin McGinley, do you think the current board will establish and communicate an action plan from the recent supporters survey, for example, a ticket exchange scheme? Did you do the survey a month or so ago?
I did do the survey, yeah. I think the survey is a good idea. I'm just worried it's just one of those things where they could say that they've done it and then nothing really comes of it. Seems to have been my experience with Celtic a lot over the last decade or so, is like a lot of boxes there to be ticked, and then they tick them and then never really follow through on anything that's tangible. That would be my worry with it. I think there's a sense that they might be moving towards that over the next couple of seasons, but everything just seems to move at a glacial pace with that kind of thing at Celtic. So do I think it's going to be in place this season? No. Will it be in place for the start of next season, sorry? I think that's very much up in the air, and I wouldn't put your mortgage on it, let's put it that way. So there's hope that they seriously take a lot of this feedback on board, and they might get the feedback. This might be a thing where something that a minority of fans talk about quite a lot. Maybe the majority of the sport aren't looking for that kind of thing, but I think so many other clubs are doing it now, and I think it's just a bit of a tap in not to do it. But then what are the infrastructure implications? Do they need to put investment into, etc., etc.? I think they've got the money to if they really want to, but it's just everything seems to happen so slow with that kind of thing at Celtic. So I just don't really have much faith that's going to happen, anytime soon. To be frank, what are your thoughts on that? Because I know you did quite a lot when you were still back in Scotland on stadium upgrades and kind of speaking to different people at Celtic. So what are your feelings on it?
Yeah, I remember doing a bit on the ticket exchange scheme and speaking to the sports liaison officer, John Paul Taylor, and he kind of explained a bit why the club haven't gone for this, and their argument at the time was that they wouldn't really do it until virtually every game was selling out. They didn't think it was viable until every game was selling out. That is the case now. Like, virtually every Celtic home match does sell out. Like, the crowds are incredible. And I just think you wonder how hard a thing it would really be to implement. And I think it would make such a difference, the ticket exchange stuff. Like, it's one of those things that you look at and you can't really think of many reasons not to go for it, other than the club just being kind of a little bit stuck in their ways and not wanting to go to the effort and the hassle of actually changing something. Because you go along to Celtic Park for a lot of league games, and the game's been named as a sellout, and the club have been shouting about that, and then you turn up and a lot of the time there's like probably close to 10,000 empty seats for a lot of these games, and you just think, for a fact that I know there's so many of my friends, for example, that would love to be able to get to games but don't necessarily have season tickets, and you just think there's such a tap in there for the club to be able to, offer these seats to people who, as I say, wouldn't necessarily be able to buy season tickets. The season ticket holder themselves maybe gets a little bit of money back, or even a voucher towards their next season ticket. And the stadium's full, the team get the full backing. Then maybe the club sell more in the way of food and even merchandise and stuff like that at the Celtic store. So I can't see any reason not for them to do this. And I think that's why supporters struggle a little bit with this one. There must be a reason. I mean, there clearly is a reason, otherwise this would be in.
I just sometimes find, with big organisations where there's so much staff, and the staff are working hard on their job, I think for changes to happen, it sometimes needs a champion within the club, that needs just one person who's like, I really think we should do this and it really needs to happen, and that becomes their own little personal cause almost, and that they help enact the change from within. And I don't know if anyone feels strongly enough about this kind of thing within the club, who's working within the club, who's in meetings, at a high level, at a high enough level to really care about it. I think sometimes with big organisations, things rumble along really nicely, but it's really hard to enact change because you need to become a personal champion, and that takes effort and input that might be beyond your job description and the work that you do, which is probably everyone within Celtic will be working hard. So it takes someone to go above and beyond to institute a major change that's going to cost money, take resources, take time. And I just don't know if it's enough of a burning issue for staff within Celtic. That's my only thought on it.
Okay. Yeah, maybe it's not. Maybe it doesn't actually matter as much to them as it does to supporters. I just think it's one of my kind of frustrations is when you watch a Celtic game, a 3:00 Saturday game, and a lot of the time it is full, but sometimes, especially in the winter months, you turn it on and you'll see a lot of empty seats and the game's been marked as a sellout, and you kind of question, what's going on here. So I would like it to be something the club look at, but we'll wait and see. Right, we do have a few more questions, but they can be quick ones because I've not actually given you them yet, and they are kind of more fun ones, let's just say. TJ the Legend, what Celtic goal did you celebrate the most? I was trying to think. Only one's take me to tears, and that was Tom Rogic at Hampden against Aberdeen. That was an emotional one.
Tom Rogic is the one that sprung straight to my mind. Obviously, I think actually probably was Jan Vennegoor's header against Rangers in the 2-1 game. I think that was probably the one. Actually, thinking about it, that's the one that still makes me excited just visualising it in my head, I think. So I would probably go for that one. I think the end of that 07-08 season just is so memorable for me for lots of reasons. Obviously, I was a bit younger, so just the life experiences around that season are just something that can't really be replicated. And I just think it was just so special the way that we won that league that season. And I think, that header, that moment, it just makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up. So I'd probably choose that header, yeah.
Yeah, as you say, it's so much of it depends on where you were at the time, how you feeling at that time in your life, even the type of goal as well. That was such a good one because you knew it was going in the minute McDonald headed it across. You almost had a moment where you went, oh my God, we're going to score a winner, and then Big Jan comes in. Tony Watt against Barcelona would be up there, but I remember just being in disbelief that kind of night. So there's been so many. A weird one like Leal Abada against Dundee United in the last minute was pretty mad. Donati against Shakhtar was wild those years ago.
If you want me to go way back, a lot of people bring this game up, but I just remember it so vividly, and I must have been about 9 or 10 at the time, was when we played Dundee United in the quarter-final of the Scottish Cup. They scored, and they were in the division below us at the time. It was going to be a big upset, and then Celtic scored 2 goals in 2 minutes at the end of the game. Andries Tom and Pierre van Hooijdonk, and that is probably the most... I was just a wee boy, but I still remember the feeling so vividly. I was with my dad, and it was just so strong, such a strong moment that I'll never ever forget, and I can just close my eyes and picture it and hear the noise. and the clacking of the seats going up as everyone's expecting the goal to go in. Just all of that good stuff that everyone, just the whole part of the experience of, supporting Celtic. So if you want me to go way back, it's then going mid back. It's Jan Vennegoor and I think more recently is Tom Rogic. Yeah, those are the three.
Okay. Not a bad selection. We've had a fair few to choose from. Right, just finally, Waz Doggio, how big will Ange's grin be when they kick off at Ibrox? You fancy that one, don't you? That'll be an interesting night.
Yeah, it's going to be funny. But the thing with Ange is, and, we spent a lot of time talking about Ange and listening to what Ange says, I think he'll try to downplay it a little bit because I think he just cares about. I don't think he ever attaches too much sentiment to winning. I think if it was Rangers or some team from Lithuania, I think he'd want to win the game just as much. So that's just my feeling on it. So I don't think he's going to go too much to town on it. I think, obviously, if they pick up a good result, I think he'll have a few cheeky remarks in the post-match, but I think he's going to probably try and downplay that kind of emotional coming back to Glasgow aspect for it. Because I don't think Ange likes being the story too much either, so I don't think he's going to want to divert too much attention away from just he wants Spurs to win. I think that's going to be his message.
I hope he's got the full team out. I would just love him to get a big victory there, or even any sort of victory just for old time's sake. He's got a duty as a former manager of Celtic to go to Ibrox and to win comfortably. Right, okay, I think that's our lot, John. I've enjoyed working our way through them. Thanks, everyone, for sending your questions, and apologies if we didn't get on to yours. I think I'm going to do one with Stevie next week as well. That'll be fun. So we might raise some of the questions that didn't quite make it onto your video, John. Stevie can have them and deal with them. Right, okay, we're going to head, everyone. Thanks for watching. Back tomorrow when we'll be finding out about one of Celtic's new signings.